and taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.
Welcome to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. I'm Steve Boss, and you have tuned into 60 minutes of delicious radio. We've got a show with all kinds of interesting facets to it. I was hoping that we'd have a funny song, but instead we're going to have an intellectual treat. And then we have a neuroscientist who's going to be on with us, and we have two amazing young women who are culinary stars. So I'd say we've got quite a show planned. But first, we're going to kick it off with our health coach, Emily Rose Shaw. Welcome.
Thank you.
Always so good to see you.
It's always great to be here.
All right. So
we're going on 6 months.
But you're going to leave us.
Well, we're going to talk about that.
Over the course of the show thus far, you've given us very valuable information about nutrition, but you've also helped us realize the importance of expanding the conversation to talk about all aspects of health and life. In your experience in working with clients as a holistic nutrition coach, do you see a deeper underlying theme for what's holding us back from eating healthy or living a healthy lifestyle?
I do. I work with a lot of women, and us women instinctively and conditionally are givers. We're the nourishers, and sometimes we feel selfish for putting more time and attention on our self-care. But I stress the importance that when we take more me time, it's actually not just good for us, but everyone around you benefits. You'll generally be happier, healthier, and you'll be a good role model for your family and your community, all those that are around you. In order to give 100% in your relationships, your career, and in your community, take care of yourself. Nourishing yourself will nourish those around you. As human beings, we crave love, we crave acceptance, connectedness, and purpose. And it begins deep inside all of us.
Okay, so what do you think the core problem is that hinders our ability to nourish ourselves? I certainly don't have a problem nourishing myself. As a matter of fact, my problem is usually the opposite. Anyway.
You're a guy.
Oh, I forgot. We're talking about women. All right. I know you help people lose weight permanently and work through food cravings. So what's the root cause here?
So the modern problem at the core of so many health issues like weight gain, emotional eating, digestive issues, fatigue, inflammation, the list goes on, is the high levels of stress that we endure on a daily basis. It's really become a part of the American culture. Because we're moving so fast, we're so busy, and have really grown quite impatient as a culture, we want a quick fix for our problems. For weight loss, we want a pill, surgery, a crazy diet that is handed to us, and that's not my approach. The poor quality food we're eating is certainly a problem, but it extends far beyond that. All the aspects of life are important and interconnected. Moving your body in a way that you love, healthy relationships, relationship to yourself, to food, to friends, to family, having a satisfying career that you love, and a consistent practice for connecting to the higher power, such as spiritual or religious practice, whether that's meditation or yoga, going to church, whatever that means for you. All are crucial for managing stress, health, and happiness. We need nourishment from all of these areas. This is necessary for balance. If I had to explain health and well-being in one word, that would be balance. Balance from the pH of our blood to the work, play, dance. Balance is key, and everyone's balance is different. The balance of a mom is going to be different from that of an entrepreneur, so it's very unique to the individual. And lack of balance is often the reason for emotional eating, for cravings. Perhaps we don't have enough sweetness in our life. And there are different kinds of cravings that mean different things, but cravings are actually a way of our body communicating to us. They're not really bad. I think it's important to get to the core of it, and it's really related to another part of life, like things that I mentioned, not solely food itself.
Okay, so understanding the big picture like this is key, but now let's narrow in on food. I know you're a true foodie and have a passion for healthy and delicious food, which is really important, both of those things. So many times people think healthy food can't be delicious. There is so much confusion about what to eat and how much to eat. Can you simplify this for us?
Yes. So eating as close to nature as possible, eating from nature, a whole foods diet with the majority being plant foods is truly healing and does wonders for weight loss and disease prevention. But in refining the diet, it's important to consider a concept called bioindividuality, which honors that what will work for you in terms of nutrition and lifestyle is different than what's going to work for me. And everyone's wants and needs are unique, so I believe you deserve your own health style. That's why I call myself a health stylist for your life that meets your individual wants and needs. And further, everyone's nutritional needs actually changes throughout your life depending on your age, what climate you live in, the season, how much activity you're engaged in, your stress level. So these are all really important variables to consider. And it's not just about what you eat, although that's very important, but also how you eat. To be conscious about how you eat. I teach strategies for how to eat that will help with weight loss and enhance the pleasure that we get from food, the full experience. And it's important because it's not just about the physiology, but the psychology of eating that's very important, and it's actually very fascinating. It's the mind-body connection. So diets don't work because they focus on lack and deprivation, well, often too extreme, and they're not really practical. They have you, do these radical changes basically overnight, and that's why over 90% of diets fail. Over 90% of dieters regain all or some of the weight they originally lost. So we need a different approach. We need to focus on healthy abundance. And it's about getting back to having fun in the kitchen while home cooking. I think, much of the problems with unhealthy eating and weight gain are from the fast foods, the unhealthy foods, and the processed convenient foods. So learning how to make food taste healthy and delicious, and really enjoying the whole process from shopping for your food to preparing it, eating it, and even cleaning up can bring you pleasure and fulfillment.
So you have a tagline.
I do.
All right. And that is beauty begins within. Can you tell us a little bit about what that means to you?
It really means three things. The first, in terms of food, is that eating nutrient-rich foods makes us glow from the inside out. It makes our hair and our nails stronger, our skin more radiant, and our eyes clear. And in the spiritual sense, the things we talked about, love, connectedness, purpose, starts deep inside all of us, and that's truly beautiful. And then lastly, I do have a background in fashion, and I appreciate material beauty as well, so I believe you can have both, inner beauty and outer beauty.
Okay, so in conclusion, if you just have a couple of points that we need to take away from this wonderful synopsis of everything that you've been talking about for the last 6 months, what would they be?
So a couple points. Number one, in general, I think we need to be having more fun in our lives. We need to be experiencing more pleasure, more inner freedom, and less stress. As the Guru Maharishi Mahesh Yogi says, the nature of life is bliss. Number two is to take the time to understand your health style, and that knowing it's not a quick fix, but it's the only true solution for weight loss, permanent weight loss, disease prevention, and health and happiness in general. And then three, I think it's important to get support. If you're struggling with your weight, if you want to prevent disease, if you want help finding what kind of health style is going to work for you, whether that support comes from me, your family, your community, now is always the time to take action and start your journey.
Wow. Emily Rose Shaw, thank you. You can find her at emilyroseshaw.com. She has been our health coach here for all the listeners of Great Taste for the past 6 months. And we're looking forward to talking with you again about the Earth Diet on the next show, because that's on Wednesday, October 25th, live at Hy-Vee. We'll be talking about, September 25th. Sorry, I was a month ahead, right? Wednesday, September 25th, we'll be live here at Hy-Vee talking about the Earth Diet. And that will, of course, play the week after for all of our listeners. So, again, thanks very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so, ladies, Kelly Kinsler, Savannah Strode, what are you guys up to?
Cooking.
Okay, that's brilliant. All right. Do you have any more anything else to say, or are you a one-word person also?
I'm not, but we have a variety of squash dishes for y'all tonight. We're going to do a variety
She's
of
from the South, y'all.
cooking methods also. It's not just going to be like baked or sauteed or whatever. It's going to be like 4 different kinds.
4 different kinds of cooking methods. I love that. So how many people have more squash than they know what to do with? You know, I'm sure that I'm talking to a lot of people out there in our listening audience, because this is the time of year when you're just and you know what was funny is that just today I was listening to a podcast and it was the same thing. You know, somebody was saying, okay, and now we're going to talk about what to do with all the squash that you have that you don't know what to do with. Tom Allen?
Yes, sir.
What do you have prepared for us?
Well, we have a guest, Alaric Arenander, who's talking about brain enhancement, and I have decided to play some of the most intelligent music I know, a movement from Johann Sebastian Bach, written for the lute.
All right, we're going to get to that in just a little bit, but meanwhile, we're going to have Alaric Arenander come on up, because Alaric, we're very excited to talk with you again. It's been a long time since you've been on Great Taste, so welcome. Alaric Arenander is a UCLA-trained neuroscientist, and according to his wife, knows more about the brain and central nervous system than anyone on the planet. That's quite... Yeah, that is pretty good. Right. And I think she probably said this too, that he has as a God-given gift to enable people to understand, appreciate, and utilize the infinite creative potential that is latent within the human brain. So there you go. So I'm not sure I can even stand next to him actually after that. So, but anyway, as one of the founders of the Anti-Aging Company, he has developed a line of natural, herbal, and mineral oral care and brain health products manufactured with quality and purity standards exceeding those of any competing products known to the company in the marketplace. And experience, the Anti-Aging Company says, shows that the purity of the product increases. As the purity of the product increases, so does its effectiveness. So his mission, one of his missions, is to help us all not only live longer, but to live healthier and to keep our brains functioning at the highest level.
Very good.
So you agree with everything I said?
I think it's a reasonable approach. You have a specific question?
I want you to bring that honey up here because you left it on your seat, and that's not going to happen, that's for sure. Because one of the things that Alaric does is he also raises bees. And those bees do what?
Well, these bees have about 1 million neurons. Now, up in here, we have about 200 billion neurons, all right? So you kind of dwarf a bee, all right? And everybody else listening to this and watching the show also has 100 or a couple 100 billion neurons. So bees are kind of tiny. They don't have a lot of neurons. But they are neuron for neuron, probably the smartest thing on the planet. We have a lot to learn from the bees. They get along together. They make great food. They're very healthy. Most of them pretty thin, lean, right? Right? And they don't make a fuss or a muss. And they help everybody, right? Most of our food, or majority of our food, is pollinated by them in the natural species. So anyway, this is honey. So we figured the honeybees were in trouble, so why not contribute? Since we live in a Vedic city, which is organic by law, we have organic meadows and forests. That means the honey will have only organic sources.
This is the honey that you produce.
Yes, well, they produce.
The bees produce, sorry.
Yeah, let's get this clear.
Yep, right.
When they said, when you come there, make sure you give them proper credit, right? This is the girls. The girls do this. There's a couple guys in there. They don't know what the guys do, but there's a couple guys in there. Most of them are girls. You know, if you want to get something done, look at that.
This is true, right?
Yeah.
Most of them are, most of the bees are women?
96, 97% are girls. Ladies. Women. Females.
Must be fun for those few males, I guess, huh?
Well, the thing is, the males, they don't know what the males are for. They hang around all season long, and then right about now, when the first frost comes, they're all ejected from the hive. Now, this is tough love. Now, and of course, we don't want to apply this behavior directly to the human race, because in the winter, there'll be a lot of guys out in the streets shivering. All right, so, but for the bees, it makes sense for some reason, because basically, what happens is every afternoon the males fly off into the wild blue yonder, a couple miles up, and there are mating spots way high up there. We don't know where they are necessarily or how they get there, but they're up there. And the queens go up there, and the guys fly around looking for queens. Now, they can fly around for a while, and then no queen shows up, or if a queen shows up, they mate, And then that's it. They just go plunk and they fall to the earth and they're dead. And then the new guys are born, and then
After they mate, they fall to the earth and
well,
they're
they
dead.
get exhausted. They just really never make it back. This is a one-way date. This is a one-way date. You go, you just fly your butt off, and then you just crash, right? You buzz off. Okay. It's not really funny for them. No. Okay.
It's tragic, actually, and Tom should have picked a different piece of music, probably.
Tom, you should have some background, some dum da da dum. Anyway, yeah. So basically, but honey is a fantastic thing. Not only does it produce a lot of our products, and by the way, there's 4,000 natural honeybees, native.
Species.
4,000 species of native bees. Wow. You never see them because they're really small and you're not looking for them. But from Europe, they imported this particular honeybee that we use everywhere. And honey is important. But we're losing honey.
Well, let's talk about. I know we could spend a lot of time talking about colony collapse disorder, but we don't want to. We really don't.
No.
Okay. So let's talk about why honey is important, what we can use honey for, especially as it relates to why you're here, which is to talk about strengthening our brain.
Right. Well, honey in the brain, I don't think anybody's written that story yet. However, honey has carbohydrates, which are always good. It has sort of the sweetness of sugar. It has pollen, especially if it's raw. I mean, a lot of the honey is filtered and so forth, or heated. In Ayurveda, actually, you should know that honey should be aged about 3 months minimally before used. Then it becomes more valuable, and the older it gets, the more valuable it is. So if you find an old sunken ship and there's a crock of honey in there from 2,000 years ago, gold. Okay. So anyway, honey is important because it has the carbohydrates, it has pollen, which is the protein, it has propolis, which are the resins from the tree they use to glue everything together. It has little wings left behind, not this honey, but some honey does. And all that is useful. And there's honeycomb, actually, and here you can see there's still some honeycomb because we don't filter that much. And the honeycomb can be eaten, and there's some material in the honeycomb as well. But it's useful. It's an adjuvant for medicine. It's useful in cooking. It's used in medicines. It's used in cosmetics. Actually used in wound healing now. And there, as you know, there's a number of bacterial bugs out there that are less susceptible to the antibiotics we have, right? And you remember, only reason we're living so well today is because of sanitation and antibiotics. Without those two, we'd be back where we were in the 1700s, okay? So basically, when you use honey, you can treat, and there's different kinds of honey, you can treat wounds with it, and you can actually treat bacterial infections and so forth, because it's it's a really good antibacterial and antifungal material.
Now, I know there are a lot of people who use bee pollen for allergy problems, that type of thing.
Pollen is the little spores that you find drifting through the air that the bees find at the end of the flowers, okay, in the stamens. And so they collect the pollen because that's their protein source. It's like, that's how they get their protein, right? They're not carnivores. Wasps are carnivores, okay. And so they take the pollen, bring it back to the hive, and they mix it up to feed it to little kiddos and so forth. And people can eat that pollen too. It can be stripped off the bees and be little nuggets and so forth. You want to make sure it's organic pollen because otherwise you're getting all the pesticides that have accumulated. And but it's good for you. It's good protein, and there's a lot of other stuff in there. And some people feel it's actually good for your allergies. That it's the local, especially if you have local honey. And this brings up the issue of local versus non-local honey. But anyway, if you take local honey, it'll have the local flowers, which means your local allergens, okay? The ragweed, whatever, the goldenrod, and so forth. Whatever you seem to be allergic to, most likely they will be in there. And if you have that pollen in the honey, it can perhaps help. There isn't a lot of research to verify that, but can't hurt.
Okay, so a couple questions. One, I understand that certain vegans are not interested. They think that it's wrong to eat honey because they think that you're taking food away from bees and that you're harming the bees.
Who said that?
Vegans. Not all vegans, but there is a particular
anti-honey vegans.
Anti-honey vegans, yes. Well, who believe that it's cruelty.
What, the anti-bee vegans? Well, I don't know where the rationale for that is. Like Georgia sour. There's only so many apples in the world, and there's so many people in the world. Therefore, you're allowed to have one apple a year. Right? The same kind of psychology. Right?
Okay.
This is why Georgia Sawat died early. Okay. So now the point here is that
You didn't need to have a funny song because Alaric's taking over.
So the point here is that, are we talking about Chinese honey or are we talking about the vegans? Okay, we're talking about the vegans. So basically, there's nothing wrong with honey. They make more honey than they could ever possibly use, okay? And if they get so much honey under natural conditions that they get, quote-unquote, honey-bound, then they'll ensconce. They'll just leave because there's no room to make babies, and they have to make babies, and that's... So the queen will take off with half the hive. So it's a natural tendency for them to make always more than they ever will need.
Okay. That's good. So next question. Some people, I believe in certain forms of medicine, for example, Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, I've been told that it's not good to heat honey to use it in cooking, for example. Does that have any validity?
From Ayurveda, yes. You shouldn't heat it over 100 or 105 degrees. If you get local honey, raw honey, it'll crystallize eventually. If you actually boil honey or heat it way up, it'll probably never crystallize. So if there's something sitting on the market, on the shelf, and it's clear, and it's a year old, it's not raw, and it's probably not local. So basically, this is this springtime, and you can see it's getting cloudy. And by the fall and by springtime, it'll be crystallized. Now you can put it into 100-degree water. 112 is boiling, right? 100-degree water, Fahrenheit, and it will actually liquefy again if you want. But you don't want to heat it up because then it becomes toxic.
And what does that mean? It becomes toxic. What actually happens?
No idea.
Okay, so moving along quickly.
If I knew, I would tell you. But in Ayurvedic, in the treatises, they say it becomes toxic. Okay, and so exactly why it becomes toxic is not known to modern science. But that doesn't mean it's not true, and I wouldn't think. Also, from Ayurveda, it says it should be 3 months, at least 3 months old. All right, so if you don't want to get immature, unripe honey.
So that's very interesting because so we don't have any way to
try
validate. I will in a little bit. I will just a bit, but we don't have any way to really validate that. But you think it has validity?
Well, from a scientific point of view, we have no data. From the ancient thousands-year-old tradition, which is probably the best healthcare system on the planet, I go with it. Right? Everything else they say works, so why wouldn't that work?
You're listening to Alaric Arenander, neuroscientist, and as I said, according to his wife, the smartest guy on the planet.
I think it was in terms of gardening or something.
I don't think so. Anyway, this is Steve Boss with great taste, coming to you live from Hy-Vee on KRUU 100.1 FM. The solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa, and we're going to talk about brain food in just a few minutes.
Okay.
But we're going to taste that honey later. Yeah, okay. We're going to taste that honey. We're going to hold them off. That's what we do. We hold everybody off. They can't have anything till the end, and then by that time they're like raving, lunatics.
Does Joy get
some? If she wants some, she can have some.
She's well behaved, yes.
If she's well behaved. But meantime, we're going to go back and talk to Savannah and to Kelly and to find out exactly what they're doing.
So I can go sit down again?
You may.
Thank you.
You may. And thank you. Okay, so what's happening?
I am starting to work on the butternut squash muffins.
Okay, so butternut squash muffins. Now, most of us, all the butternut squash has been cubed, and it's in a RoboCoupe. Now, most of us are not fortunate enough to have a device like this in our home kitchen, so what could we use instead?
Any kind of food processor or blender would work perfectly fine.
Okay, and so what are you going to do?
I am just going to blend this up. I cooked it for 20 minutes to soften it because it's got to get pureed to go into the muffins. And then I've got a mixture of spices, sugar, and flour that are going to go into that, and eggs and milk, of course, and bake it.
And it looks absolutely wonderful, and I'm really excited because that was my little contribution. Please make some squash muffins. So I'm really, really happy about that, and I can't wait to taste it. And what have you been working on, young lady?
Well, I have finished the Parmesan roasted acorn squash.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to bring that. Everybody's listening can't see this, but we're going to take this and bring it right over here so everybody can see this. Parmesan roasted acorn squash, Parmigiano roasted acorn squash, absolutely gorgeous. And so what did you do here, besides spending about 20 minutes trying to cut up the acorn squash?
That's only like 15. Well, we just cut it and de-seeded it, and then we sliced it about 3/4 of an inch, half an inch. Tossed them with olive oil, salt, thyme, and pepper, and sprinkled them with Parmesan cheese and baked them until tender.
So about how long was that? At what temperature?
400 degrees, about 20-25 minutes.
And actually, I don't like acorn squash, but this actually looks beautiful. And I never know what to do with it. I just want to throw it in the oven or the toaster oven almost whole and just take it out again 15 minutes later or whatever and cut off the top and take out the seeds and give it to my wife to eat. I'll eat something else. Okay, now, grilled spiced zucchini. That sounds good.
Yeah, we'll be making that shortly.
And that's going to have zucchini, butter, salt, pepper. Where's the spice?
The pepper?
The pepper. I didn't see any. Just pepper. Oh, whatever you want to add? Okay, so we'll see if we can add something to make it really nice and spicy. So that sounds absolutely delicious. And is there something else, or is that it? So 3 zucchini dish. No, herb spaghetti squash. Okay. What are we going to do there? 1 small spaghetti squash, which small spaghetti squash is kind of a funny word. 2 1/4 pounds. 2.5 tablespoons of butter, 2.5 tablespoons of finely chopped mixed herbs such as basil, chives, chervil, parsley, and sage. And we're using
parsley, chives, and thyme.
All right, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt and 1/8 teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper. And what are you going to do to that spaghetti squash to prepare it, by the way?
Well, right now it's in the oven baking. It has to be tender or else it's not going to taste good at all. And
so is that baked whole?
We cut it in half and took the seeds out and then put it in a kind of like a water bath. You just fill it with water till it's about halfway.
Okay, so I'm going to go take a look at that so I know exactly how to describe this to everybody. So, it's in the bottom. Okay, so it's in a baking pan, right? But it's not a baking pan. Is that a baking pan? What do you call that? What's the real word for that?
Hotel pans.
Hotel pan. So everybody has to say get a hotel pan. Anyway, and it's about halfway filled with water, and it's up or down, the spaghetti squash. Cut side up, cut side down.
Oh, down.
Cut side down, and you bake it for about how long?
An hour.
It wasn't a trick question. So.
It was too.
Okay, so you bake it for about an hour, and then comes the fun part, right? So what happens then?
Well, then we put the butter and the herbs on it and eat it.
That's it. And it's called spaghetti squash because it kind of... Yeah.
When you scrape out like the insides, it looks like spaghetti.
It doesn't taste like spaghetti, though. Okay. So we'll be back. I'm going to go this way, actually. So we'll be back checking with you guys really soon. What have you been doing in school lately?
I'm in the baking side. Both of us are. We moved over into baking last term. So we're working on cheesecakes right now.
And you didn't bring one?
Mine's in the fridge.
Fridge? Like fridge here?
Fridge at school.
At school. Oh, okay. We'll see if we invite them back next month. All right. So Beverly Merson is here with Cinebites. I'm really excited. I always am to hear what you have to say because there's always something really fun to listen to. So what's happening, Bev? Come on up here and let's talk a little bit together.
Sure. Hi, Steve. Well, tonight I'm going to talk about Women on Top. It's an American film. I would say it doesn't have what all the international films I've talked about in terms of the depth and the beauty, but it was fun. There's eye candy because there's Penelope Cruz, who's absolutely gorgeous, and there's, I can't remember his name, it's a Spanish name, who plays her husband, and he's really absolutely gorgeous. Some more, Muriel's Benicio, absolutely gorgeous. So this film, it's a fantasy romantic comedy that takes place in Brazil. And Isabella is one of the main characters of the movie, who is played by Penelope Cruz. And what happens is she grows up, when she's a little girl, she has motion sickness, and her parents take her everywhere to get rid of this motion sickness, and they just can't get it under control. So she has a different type of life. She can't be out playing because of her motion sickness. So she grows up in the kitchen with the woman who helps the family in cooking, and she's learning constantly how to cook. So she becomes a chef. And this movie starts taking place in her restaurant by the ocean in Brazil. And she's married now to her husband, and he takes all the glory. She's a phenomenal chef. Everybody's coming to the restaurant, but she's in the back. and he's out there schmoozing with all the customers and so on and so forth, and everybody wants to come. It's really starts to become world famous. People from around the world come, enjoy. She has special dishes, fish dishes that are phenomenal, and that's the reason I'm talking about it, Alaric, is because Steve said last week you were coming and you were talking about brain food, and when I grew up, I was always told to eat my fish because it was good for the brain. So I figured because you're coming and talking about brain food, I'm going to talk about a film that has a lot to do with fish because of the brain. Do you know anything about that, being good for the brain, fish? You agree. And is it because of the omega-3s and 6s?
We're going to get into that. You're preempting things here. Just talk about the movie. Just talk about the movie. All right, I'll tell you what. If you want to talk about it, come on up right now then. Come on. Well, okay, I am dying to hear, so.
So anyway, what happens is because she has such phobia about motion, she always has to drive. So you see her driving around on the motorcycle with her husband behind, and she always has, when they have sex, she always has to be the woman on top. And he, being the macho man, gets a little bit upset, and he walks out and he decides to have a little affair, just a fling, and she walks in on it. She leaves Brazil.
This is about food, right?
Yes, it is. Because what happens is the restaurant goes downhill. The husband gets very upset. He curses. There's the reason it's a fantasy comedy is because there is the goddess of the sea. Her husband goes and curses the sea. The fish dry up. And then she's now in San Francisco. She lands up and she's looking for a job. And she lands up in a cooking school. And she's this gorgeous Brazilian with the accent, passionate about food, teaching people the passion about food. And somebody discovers her because her food is so good that everybody in San Francisco smells it. And you see, there's a scene of everybody following her because she's created aroma that goes right through the whole city, and you see just crowds and crowds of following her. Anyway, she's a very successful cooking school. Her neighbor smells her food. He's in charge of a cooking show, and he needed an idea, and he says, why don't we get her to create this cooking show? So the cooking show is because she's so stupendous and so gorgeous, the cooking show is a total success, and they decided to go national with this cooking show. But what happens is, one thing I need to say that's really important, she asks the goddess of the sea again that she doesn't love anymore. So her husband comes to get her, and she doesn't love him anymore, but he sneaks onto the show. He picks all these musicians off the street, and before you know it, she's cooking, and he's serenading her behind the show. What happens is the network TV, I know I'm going on, but there's a cute end. The last scene is really worthwhile watching. The network TV decides, it's called Passion Food, that's the name of her show, and the network decides they want to take it national. And of course, what happens when a corporation comes in, everything gets watered down. So she decides, you know what, she wants to start loving it again. She goes and she begs the goddess of the sea, could she have her love back again? The goddess of the sea, she almost drowns. When she's going through this
It's a tragedy then.
When she's going through this whole offering, the goddess of the sea, please, can I have my love back? She goes back, she picks up all her stuff from the show, and she goes home and she starts cooking. Everything's a flop. The souffle flops. Nothing. She just can't cook. What happens is her husband comes and serenades her because he's not giving up on her. He's going to get her back. So after she made this offering to the sea, she gets her love back. They start to fall in love again. And the last scene of the film is probably one of the most sensual food scenes I've ever seen. You see them falling in love. She's cooking, he's touching her as she's cooking, and their hands are just moving together through all the different dishes. And just for that scene alone, it's really worthwhile to watch this film. Woman on Top, American film. It's cute.
You took my breath away, that's for sure. Thank you.
And why did I take your breath away, Steve?
I can't even talk about it. I mean, it's just... I need Alaric back here quick. Get some fuel for my brain. Oh my gosh! But let me just Penelope Cruz. Can we have her on the show? We'll try. We'll see what we can do. Anyway, Bev, I just want to ask you one thing that you can just holler and I'll repeat it, and that is, honestly, is this a movie? We've heard the whole story now. So is this a movie worth watching or not? Oh, yeah. It is. Okay. Okay, it's a cute movie and it's worth watching. All right, that's great. All right, what about omega-3s?
So, omega-3s are essential fatty acids. That means you don't make them. That's why they're essential. You got to get them from outside. So if you need your...
I didn't know if I was supposed to play the straight man or what. I wasn't sure, what was going.
I was giving you the option. Okay. So basically, omega-3s. Now, you have to remember there are different omegas. There's the 3s, the 6s, the 9s, etc. Let's just focus on the 3s and the 6s, okay? Now, the 3s are primarily from seeds and nuts, like walnuts and hemp seeds and chia seeds and flax seeds. You grind them up. You should always grind them fresh. If you eat them, they're going to go through your gut because that's what they're meant to do. So you got to grind your seeds and then eat them fresh. Otherwise, you get toxic.
So wait a minute. I'm afraid I don't really understand. So I've been, like this morning, I'm eating walnuts that came.
Walnuts.
I was with my dad, and he cracked the walnuts, that came right from the tree, and I'm eating them whole, and I shouldn't do that?
No, it's okay. I didn't mention walnuts. I was mentioning the seeds.
Ah,
that was
okay.
A nut.
Seems like there's a preponderance of nuts here, actually, at the show.
No, I think they're more seedy. But anyway, so we have here then omega-3s. Now, what people have to realize, and this is the important point, is that you don't need those omega-3s. The reason for that is, in other words, you don't need your flaxseed oil, you don't need all those walnuts, you don't need all the chia and hemp seeds, although they're excellent food sources. Don't get them for your omega-3s because when you put them in your body doesn't know what to do with them. Your body will make, because you have to take that parent omega-3, okay, and you have to make it longer. That takes enzymes, and your body converts it, that basic thing, to something longer, okay? Those are called EPA and DHA, okay? Those are the longer compounds. Now, if your body made them well, that would be just fine, but they don't. Maybe 2 or 3%. You're not going to get enough. And you need these because every cell in your brain and your body, everything needs these things. The membrane of every cell requires these. So you really need them. And the other problem here is not only can you not convert them very well, but people have a predominance of omega-6s, which is another type of an essential fatty acids. And that's because most of the Western diet is heavy on the dairy, the meat, and the grains and the oils, okay? And these have a huge amount of omega-6s. Now, there's nothing wrong with omega-6. Back 150 years ago, there was a 1-to-1 ratio in our diet. But our diet isn't what we had 150 years ago. We now eat ice cream sundaes all day long, or beef burgers, whatever we got, okay? The point is that we have now 40-to-1, 6-to-3.
Okay, 40-to-1, our diet is basically
Shifted.
40-to-1 omega-6 as compared to omega-3.
Right. So instead of 1-to-1, which is probably the more natural one that we were sort of born to have, we now have 40-to-1, which means the omega-6s, which are inflammatory, especially if you get enough of them, and when everybody has more than enough, our body gets inflamed. So most people's bodies are inflamed. That leads to cardiovascular disease, leads to obesity, it causes arthritis, and so forth and so on. So most of the modern ailments either are caused by or exacerbated by the omega-6s. And on top of that, the omega-6s gobble up all the enzymes, which makes the omega-3s almost impossible to get the long-chain ones. So how do you solve this problem? You can cut back on all your dairy, your meat, and your nuts, and your oil. I mean, not your nuts, but your grains and stuff. You could do that. It'd be a sensible thing to do. But you could also supplement with the omega-3s, the long-chain ones. And those are only found in their marine source. That's in a body of water, not in a field, okay? So you either get the algae, or you get the protoplankton, or you get the little shrimpy guys, or you get the little fish, or you get the medium-sized fish, or you get the giant fish, okay? You pick the thing, but the algae make it, and then it gets gobbled up the chain. So marine source is the only source of DHA and EPA. So if you're a vegan, you get an algae one, okay? If you're not a vegan and if you're not a vegetarian, then you can get anything you want. There are fish sources which are very good.
I just want to interrupt you because this is really, it's confounding me in a way, and that is, you're saying that we have to have these omega-3s in order to survive,
Right.
and yet a lot of the world is landlocked. I don't understand why the physiology would be tailored in such a way to essentially fail in a sense. Fail in the sense that you're not going to be able to get what you need.
Well, you have to remember, too, that when everything was created equal, back a long time ago, that we didn't have 40-to-1 ratio. We didn't have all the dairy. We didn't have all the meat. We didn't have all the grains. We didn't have all the refined oils. And so we had a more balanced diet.
Still, if you're not in a place to get this enrichment from the sea, if you're in a landlocked area, then how in the world did people a long time ago get omega-3s into their system?
Well, first of all, because there'd be less omega-6s, the enzymes would work better for them, so you can ink through and get them. That doesn't mean people lived as well as they could have lived. That doesn't mean they didn't have cardiovascular disease and other problems and so forth. But the point is that we can do better, and there's like 40, 50 years of research now showing that everything from whether it's pregnancy to lactation to young childhood to older to elderly, almost everybody can benefit from supplementing with the omega-3, the long chains, the DHA and the EPA.
Okay, and that's either supplementing through some type of actual supplement or eating more fishy things.
Yes. And you have to be careful because most of the fish and marine stuff are toxic because they're polluted.
Okay, so one more time then, what are the things that have omega-6s that we can actually, maybe some of us need to cut back a little bit on?
Dairy,
okay,
meat, refined oils, grains.
Grain.
Yeah, I mean, like you eat a bag of chips. Yeah.
Oatmeal.
Too much, yes. Yeah, I can see maybe you're inching up to that level, but
that bowl every morning is getting me in trouble, huh?
No, that bowl every morning is probably good for you. It's all the other chips during the day that are not good for you.
There was a bag, actually, of barbecue kettle chips that I finished off in 2 days, and I was really embarrassed by. Okay, let's.
But that was 2 days. Before it was 1 day.
Yeah,
so
that's
you're
right.
in the right direction.
Okay, so those are the foods that we need to get more in balance in our system. Of course, that's a lot of
either fish or marine or supplement. It's the stuff is cheap enough. You got to get the right brand, because if you don't get the right brand, it's actually could be toxic because these things fall apart quickly. So basically, if you bring more omega-3s, the DHA and EPA in your diet, you can help your memory, your skin, your eyes, your heart. Everything gets better. In fact, there's medical things for cardiovascular disease where they give you therapeutic dosage and it helps turn things around. So basically, you want to take it from a good source. And although I have no financial gain from this, the only company out there that I think is worthwhile is something called Nordic Natural. So if you're really looking for the product which you want to take, you look online or in your store for Nordic Natural. They're the only ones really to trust at this point. But if you can find somebody else that has very good pure products and so forth, then go wherever you can go. But
and that's for the supplements.
That's for the supplements. Otherwise, a lot of fish.
Okay, and one of the
tricky.
It is tricky,
or
but there's
a lot of green soupy algae,
Okay, one of the companies that you can really trust, I think, as far as fish is concerned, is Vital Choice. Vital Choice is a great company. You can find them online, and they actually... I saw that. My peripheral vision saw that. Anyway, Vital Choice actually tests all their fish, and obviously they have some type of threshold that they're not going to include fish after a certain threshold. But you're right. So probably the safer way is to supplement.
Yeah, that's the safe way to do it. And then you can have fish as you wish it, as you want. But you want to make sure you get probably 1 or 2 grams a day of the DHA and EPA. And there's a ratio between whether you're more about the brain or more about the heart and the skin and the eyes and stuff. But you can talk to your health practitioner and they can help you out on that.
Okay, well, that's really a fascinating insight, and I really appreciate it. Yeah. What else?
Well,
we want to be healthy. We want our brains to function really, really well. Sleep has got to be a great part of that.
Yeah, anything to allow the system to regenerate and heal, because your brain works 24 hours a day. It never stops. It's always cranking. And as much rest as you can give it, especially to compensate for all the stress and exertions and emotional turmoil and the lack of good food and so forth, it's good to do. Any form of rest that you can get and a good routine, like going to bed before 10 or at 10, is always better. If you don't go to bed at 10, it gets to be 11 or 12, and you start eating again, and then you got food in your stomach at 12 midnight and never gets digested. You wake up in the morning, it's not working well. So if you can get to bed by around 10, that's the best thing. If you want to get more time, and just get up early, but get to bed early.
So there was something to that early to bed, early to rise.
Part of that 1-to-1 versus the 40-to-1. Mm-hmm. Yeah, back a long time ago, there was a little more sense.
Okay, so what other parts of our system need that nourishment, something that we may not even know about that we need to make sure we have?
You should be concerned for your gut bacteria. Yeah. No, just your gut bacteria, not your gut. So the bacteria in the gut, there's probably 500 species of bacteria in your gut. They're mainly in your large intestines, okay? But those 500 species make up your sort of the environment, the ecology of your gut. And they're important because they now think that those gut bacteria are very important for whether people are thin or fat, obese or not. And we can change them based on our diet, change them based on the stress level, whether we take antibiotics or medicines and stuff like that. And so we want to make sure that we treat our gut bacteria well. And that's why people sometimes supplement with probiotics in yogurt and kefir and stuff like that to keep their digestive flora in the right way. And if you ever have antibiotics for a respiratory illness and so forth, you're also killing off your gut bacteria. So you're going to have the problems in your gut bacteria. So if you're taking antibiotics, you should be wolfing down the yogurt and the kefir and the probiotics to compensate for that. Otherwise, especially when you're becoming elderly, you can have a lot of complications, including running bowels and dehydration, and it could be a serious thing. So the gut bacteria are very important. They did a study actually. You take twins, human twins. And human twins are identical genetically, so mainly it's just sort of the environment thing. So sometimes human twins, not often, one gets fat, one stays thin. You can take the gut bacteria from the fat one and from the thin one, and you can feed it to mice. Mice don't mind, they're just gut bacteria. And the bacteria from the fat twin creates fat mice. The bacteria from the thin twin creates thin mice. So it's the bacteria which has a very important role in whether you actually gain body fat and whether you get metabolically disruptive and so forth. There's a lot going on now in science showing that.
Well, is there something that people can do? Like they can go to their doctor and get a gut bacteria test? Or?
Actually, in the near future, yes, you'll be able to get all of that. And there'll be a lot of other stuff on the side of the road for certain doctors. But the idea here is that the most important element is your diet. Because if you have a really good diet, in other words, a not saturated fat, high fat diet, if you have more vegetables and more fruits in your diet, then the fat guys don't work. It's the lean bacteria which always win out. So when you eat a sort of Mediterranean diet or a veggie fruit more diet and less of the fat, dairy and meat and stuff like that, then you're actually changing the flora in your intestines, which is changing how you process that food and what you do with it. They actually release signals to help you get fatter or thinner. And so your gut bacteria are very important. They're part of your life. I mean, there's more gut bacteria. They're tiny, of course. There's more gut bacteria than all the cells in your body. You have trillions of cells, but there are 10 to trillions of bacteria. You have a gigantic organ in your body which is organizing your digestion, and it all starts with digestion.
You know, what's fascinating to me is there are other schools of thought out there. For example, there's the paleo diet. Well, there's the paleo diet. There's paleo, like Paleolithic.
You eat bones or what?
Like, going back to, we'll say, caveman type of hunter-gatherers. Uh-huh. And then there's also the people who are very vocal about indigenous people's diets and how those diets are much more healthy for all of us. But I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that most of those diets, at least in a lot of cultures, are really meat-based. So that kind of goes against, what you're talking about. So it's fascinating.
Well, part of it is the dairy and the saturated fats and the refined oils and all the grains and so forth, which aren't in those diets usually, okay? And yes, like the Native American Indians have a completely different dietary system. And when they take on an American Western food diet, they can, get all messed up. So yes, there are cultural and genetic trends that allow you to be healthier. Of course, anybody on a fruit and veggie, diet is going to do much better anyway. But they absolutely have to have that because their whole bodies can't deal with this other stuff. But yeah, there's the genetics involved. But it's also, in the end, there's nothing that's just proved that the vegetarian diet isn't part of the best diet. It's just that's not what people are used to, what they think they should be having, and what they enjoy. There are vegans that don't even do that, and they think they're having a good life. So you can enjoy a certain kind of diet, and the vegetarian diet is a lot healthier than the non-vegetarian diet. It's just healthier, period.
Fascinating. Yeah. All right, you're listening to Great Taste on KRUU 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. In a few minutes, relax. I'm Steve Boss, and this is 60 Minutes of Delicious Radio. And we have had two Indian Hills Culinary Arts students cooking away here. And so tell us what's happening now.
Well, Kelly is preparing the sautéed yellow squash, and I'm about to start grilling the zucchini.
Okay, so the sautéed yellow squash is going to be, that's another preparation. You guys have got so many things going on here. How are you doing the sautéed yellow squash? Talk to Kelly. All right, I'll do it.
How am I doing them? I just put some olive oil and some butter in this pan and melted it. The butter, not the olive oil.
Saturated fats, right? Okay.
Yeah. And then
Just the butter, not the olive oil.
we just have some sliced yellow squash and chopped red onion.
Chopped red bell pepper.
Yeah.
So it's actually just chopped red bell pepper, a little bit of butter, a little bit of olive oil, and sliced yellow squash and salt, pepper.
Yeah, and then I have some fresh herbs that are going to go into it later. It's parsley and chives.
Wow. I mean, this is really a lot of wonderful. This is a lot of wonderful vegetables here, Alaric. I hope you're, noticing that. So, and then this preparation with the zucchini.
It has butter, salt, and pepper on it. It's just tossed together, and then we grill it.
And I think the most important thing here is to realize that you can take these squashes and you can do just very simple things to make them totally different in terms of their taste. So you've got a sautéing. You're sautéing the yellow squash. You're grilling the zucchini. You baked the spaghetti squash, and you baked the acorn squash. Is that right?
I believe the proper term for the spaghetti squash is poaching.
Aha, so you poached it. So you actually have poaching, sautéing, baking, and grilling going on, all with squashes, all with fresh herbs, and all with different kinds of squash. And so there's no reason that any of that squash in your garden should get wasted.
Right.
All right. Tom Allen? Alaric gave us a lot to think about. So can you help us along? Maybe we can muse over that by listening to this piece that you have prepared for us.
Yeah, it's known that good classical music actually enhances your intelligence, and they've done a lot of tests on that. So it's not only what you take into your mouth, but what you take into your ears. And I feel strongly about the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, so I'm going to play a movement from the Jig from the first flute suite. It's generally done with repeats, but that makes it longer, so I'll do it without the repeats. And I hope you enjoy this. This is the Jig, which is French for jig, from the first lute suite for unaccompanied lute transcribed for the guitar, Johann Sebastian Bach.
That was beautiful, Tom. I really, it's amazing how my mind just calmed right down just listening to that music. It's beautiful.
Thank you. And that particular piece has so much integrity, so much coherence. There's so many things in that are intelligent. It blows me away. And I could talk for a long time, but I will just give you one little clue. The piece starts like this. The second piece, did you hear it? Goes down. The second half starts with. It's sort of the mirror image of it. And there is so much coherence and intelligence weaving together, doing the same thing in a little different way, like upside down or slowing it down. There's so much intelligence in that piece that I just get endless satisfaction out of it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, Alaric, I want to talk a little bit about what it takes to maintain the kind of intelligence that someone like Johann Sebastian Bach must have had throughout his entire life, because so much of what we hear today when we read the paper, and some of us are getting a little bit up there, is all about dementia. It's like the plague of our modern time. Is there anything that we can do, anything that scientifically is known to allow us to really keep our faculties sharp?
Yeah, it is a serious problem. In another 20 years, it'll be probably the biggest problem in this country, that approximately half the boomers will have Alzheimer's.
Half?
About half, yeah. And the other half will be trying to figure out what to do about it. So that's what they predict anyway. So the point is that the reason that's going to happen is that there's all these risk factors, age being one of them. I mean, you don't get Alzheimer's when you're young, although you create the ground for Alzheimer's when you're young. And so basically there's age and lack of proper diet, smoking, hitting your head, There's lots of things that actually put you at risk for dementia and Alzheimer's, including stroke. Stroke is not good at all. I mean, you can have a pretty good brain and get one stroke and the whole thing can go. So you don't want cardiovascular disease and other problems, obesity, to lead to stroke. So there's a lot of things that put you at risk, but there are things that actually are protective. The protective things are exercise, one of the most protective things you can do. Of course, to get somebody to exercise is nearly impossible, right? It's like everybody's taped down to a chair. So, but exercise has been shown to be really powerful. The other thing which you can do is a leaner diet. I mean, a really good, quote-unquote, Mediterranean diet is one of the best things you can do. So exercise and diet, and that's basically the end of modern medicine. They say exercise and get a better diet, and you will reduce your risk considerably. Of course, earlier rather than later, right? I mean, once the fire starts, it's kind of hard to put it out. And basically, you can think of Alzheimer's and dementia in many cases as being just inflammation of the brain, where the brain cells are unhappy because you've mistreated them for 40, 50, 60 years. Because basically, if you want a one-sentence summary, most of Alzheimer's, there's some rare forms of it that are genetic, but most of it is lifestyle determined. In other words, you lived the life this way, and therefore you get this. If you lived your life another way, you would not get this.
All right. Alaric, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Ladies, really, thanks so much for this wonderful treat that all of us are going to get to enjoy. Just a really beautiful preparations of squash. And Beverly, again, also thank you for Cinebites. And Tom, beautiful music. Next week, the Earth Diet on KRUU. Great taste. 100.1 FM, the solar-powered voice of Fairfield, Iowa. Thank you. And you've been listening to 60 Minutes of Delicious Radio.
Great taste. Sweet. Sour. So good to taste.